So question 22 was also a pretty interesting question. So we're given that one morning, each member of Angela's family drank an 8-ounce mixture of coffee with milk. And the amounts of coffee and milk varied from cup to cup, but were never zero. And we're given Angela drank a quarter of the total amount of milk and a sixth of the total amount of coffee. Want to know how many people are in the family? So this is like another kind of word problem, right? So remember, the general strategy for word problems is you want to convert the words into math. So we have, we have like Angela's family, and we want to know how many people are in her family. So let's let like n equal number of people in Angela's family. So now what we can do is for each family member, we can let like, let's take a look at let's first focus on the first family member, right? So you know what, let's first take a look at like Angela, right? So let's say that Angela drank like, let's just call a variable like x1. So let's say x1 represents the amount of like milk that she drank. So x1 represents the amount of milk. So if Angela drank x1 amount of milk, that means she drank 8 minus x1 amount of coffee, right? Because we know the total amount of milk and coffee has to always equal 8 ounces. So now, like, let's suppose this is like what Angela drank. Now we don't know about the other family members, right? So let's say the second family member drank x2 amount of milk. That means for coffee, they drink 8 minus x2 amount of coffee. And let's say the third family member drank like x3 amount of milk and 8 minus x3 amount of coffee. Remember, like the sum of the total amount of milk and coffee must always equal 8 from the problem. And we can continue this logic. And the last person, the nth person, let's say the nth person drinks xn amount of milk. That means they drink 8 minus xn amount of coffee. Right? So now we look back at the question, and they told us that Angela drank a quarter of the total amount of milk, right? So the total amount of milk drank by all family members is going to be x1 plus x2 plus ... all the way to xn, right? This sum, like the sum of all of these numbers here, represents the total amount of milk drank by all the family members. And we know that Angela drank 1/4 of those, like 1/4 of the milk. So Angela drank x1 amount. And we know this must equal 1/4. And we also know that Angela drank 1/6 of the total amount of coffee, right? So the total amount of coffee is going to be the sum of all of these values. So the total amount of coffee is going to be, like, clearly we're going to have like n times 8, because we have like n of these 8s. So the sum of all of these n values in the blue circle, that's going to be equal to 8 times n minus x1 plus x2 plus ... plus xn. So this like blue expression on the denominator equals the sum of all of these numbers here in the blue circle. And we know that Angela drank 1/6 of it. So we know Angela drank 8 minus x1 amount of coffee, right? So we have 8 minus x1, and this has to equal 1/6. So we can kind of like simplify this, right? So if we were to like kind of like from the first equation, we can kind of like bring this down, and we can say that like if we were to simplify, right, we get 3 times x1 equals x2 plus x3 plus ... plus xn. So basically where this equation came from was we kind of like multiply by 4 on both sides, and then we multiplied by this expression to the other side, and then we subtracted x1 on both sides. So we got this expression. And then for the second equation, if we were to bring this down, we got, if we were to cross multiply again, we would get like 6 times 8 minus x1 has to equal 8n minus x1 plus ... plus xn. So what I can like do is I'm gonna like rewrite this as like I can write it as like 8 minus x1 plus 8 times n minus 1 plus, and then minus x2 plus dot 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 plus xn. So like basically what I did there is I kind of just I kind of like split off, like this is kind of like hard to explain, right? Like this 8 and this 8 times n minus 1 equals this 8n. And then this minus x1 and this minus big expression equals like this expression here. So hopefully you can see like how we just kind of manipulated the expression there. So if I were to subtract like 8 minus x1 on both sides, I would get 5 times 8 minus x1 has to equal 8 times n minus 1 minus x2 plus dot 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 plus xn. So now to finish the problem, we can notice from this expression here, we have 3x1 is equal to this expression here. So x2 plus x3 plus dot 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 plus xn has to equal 3 times x1. So here we know that this expression must equal 3 times x1. So if we were to add 3x1 on both sides, I could also like use the distributive property here and get 40 minus 5x1. So adding 3x1 on both sides, I get 40 minus 2x1 has to equal 8 times n minus 1. And then now to finish the problem, notice that this side is a multiple of 8. The right side is a multiple of 8. So that tells us the left side also must be a multiple of 8. So we can easily see that like if we let x1 equal 8, right, then if we let x1 equal 8, we would have 40 minus 2 times 8 on the left side, which is 24. So like, or actually before we do that, notice that like we know that 40 is already a multiple of 8, right? So 40 is already a multiple of 8, and like in order for the left side to be a multiple of 8, we need 40 minus 2x to be a multiple of 8. That means 2x1 has to be a multiple of 8. So that tells us x1 has to be a multiple of 4. And the smallest value of x1 that makes that work is x1 equals 4. So if you were to try this out, you get 40 minus 2 times 4 is equal to like 32. And so you get 32 is equal to 8 times n minus 1. And indeed, 32 is divisible by 8. So if you divide by 8 on both sides, you would get 4 is equal to n minus 1. And adding 1 on both sides, you get n is equal to 5. So you get that n equals 5 is the smallest possible number of people in her family. So that would give us choice C, which is 5.